Okay, so I've been putting this off for a few days because I didn't really know how to go about this. It's a pretty complicated subject, so we're just going to kind of lay out my thoughts and talk about what's going on with Team Liquid as the season is set to start soon. They've made no major moves after the major. We just have Shui in for the long term. They've picked up a coach from Na'Vi, and they're going to keep NAF for at least right now. What can Team Liquid do to make themselves a winning side, or at least a more competitive one, as we head into the rest of 2025? Let's talk about it. If you guys enjoy this kind of content, you can show me by leaving a like, leaving a comment down below, and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Help me hit 10k subs by the end of the year. And lastly, before we get started, I would like to thank today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by SkinsMonkey, a CS2 trading website. You put in the skins that you want to trade, you select what you want, you use my code LionHeartZ for up to $5 off, or click the top link in the description, and boom, new drip.
Nice.
You can also use my code for a 35% deposit bonus if you want to buy with real money. And they have a free section with cool giveaways. So check the top link in the description, use my code to buy 15 Dragon Lores to let them know I sent you their way, and thank you to SkinsMonkey for sponsoring this video. Alright, so quickly, we're just going to go over what Liquid has done in the offseason to give you an idea of where they're at. In the middle of the Austin Major, it was announced that they are signing Shuhei long-term, so he will be the in-game leader for the foreseeable future, which is on its surface a great move. Shuhei's one of the best in-game leaders in the world, and building the system around him will be an undoubtable benefit to Liquid in the long run. But that wasn't the only problem. Liquid still didn't have a permanent head coach. They were using their analyst DeMar DeRover as an interim. So one of their first moves was to bring in Flashy, who worked underneath Blade for the last 2 years at Na'Vi. Now, Flashy has had no Tier 1 experience as a main head coach, but he's been a coach floating around the scene for several years, working with various Hungarian projects. And with 2 years working directly under Blade, I would say he amounts to a pretty safe risk. Blade is, of course, the current best coach in this era of Counter-Strike, and if you work directly underneath him, then I'm going to take that bet that you've absorbed some of that knowledge secondhand. And if Flashy can walk in and work with Shuhei to build a coherent, strong system, then that will be a huge boon for Liquid. We need to go all in as Shuhei being the controlling identity of this team going forward, so it would be the best possible outcome for Flashy to come in and work with Shuhei as much as he can to establish that kind of system. Now, it's hard to tell how good of a coach he will be because it's hard to grade coaches in general, so it remains to be seen, but hopefully Flashy can walk that line of being able to work with the difficult personalities in this team, as well as adding a great tactical level of depth and scouting that Liquid have sorely lacked with many of their previous coaches. So with those two things figured out, it left Liquid with a pretty uncertain question. Should they make another roster move? Obviously, they flamed out of the Austin Major in a big way, in no small part, because they've had such a horrible time getting their individuals to line up in the server at the same time. Ultimate's been up and down, Twist has been up and down, Nerds has been up and down. And by far the most inconsistent piece within Team Liquid has been NAF. NAF has had his worst season as a pro in Tier 1 ever, ending the first half of 2025 with a miserable .88 rating. That is just simply not good enough. And this is where things get difficult. One has to be said right away. I am massively biased in the favor of NAF. He is one of my favorite players of all time. So I am by default going to be more charitable to him than most people will. So when it comes to talking about this, I've had to set aside that charitability and try and look at things honestly. If you're Team Liquid, was it realistic to make a change for NAF that would make you guys immediately better? And I honestly don't know if there was. Because you have to try and get someone who's going to be better, and if NAF steps away to another project and instantly bounces back, that'll leave Liquid looking like the fool for not just sitting and waiting to see how things played out. The reality is that replacing an anchor or replacing a lurker like NAF is very difficult to do because the roles they play are very self-sufficient, very separate from the rest of the team, and therefore that player has to be able to read and make assessments on their own and be proactive in the space that they take. So players like Robs on the T side, Bit and Jimmy on the CT side can come at a premium. If you can't get somebody of that caliber, then letting NAF go could be a huge mistake. Realistically, the only available anchors that are on the market at this point going into this offseason would have been JKS, who you already benched for Shuhei, so it'd be kind of hard to bring him back, and then Magisk, who is just exiting from the Falcons. Now, Magisk is an interesting sidebar because him and NAF are in similar places where they're on downturns in their career trying to prove that they can still hang. So what are you going to take the risk on? NAF, who has been a legacy name for the organization and someone that your brand has a lot of identity around, or Magisk, who was just kicked from Falcons for a lot of the same reasons you would be keeping NAF. Now, I do project that Magisk could have a bounce back wherever he ends up, because I don't think he's done at being a great tier 1 anchor, but he is a project just as much as NAF is. My default deference would be to keep NAF first, then go for Magisk second, but if you made that decision, I would understand why. So hopefully now you guys can kind of understand why Liquid are kind of in a difficult position. If they move NAF, it could be very bad, or it could be very good. I, personally, and I've said this in several recaps, would prefer if Liquid did nothing. And thankfully, nothing is what they did. JesseTiv came out and made a statement earlier this week, confirming that there will be no more moves by Team Liquid during this player break. They are bringing in Flashy, they're giving Shuhei time, and they are taking a bet on NAF bringing his form back once again. So what does that kind of resurgence look like, and what has held NAF back so far this year? Let's go ahead and talk about that now. I think the one thing that contributed massively to NAF's downturn as of late was unfortunately the addition of JKS. Because while they needed JKS at the time just to fill a slot and keep the team functional, JKS and NAF unfortunately operate in basically the same spots in terms of CT and T side roles. So one had to give up room for the other, and it feels like NAF was the one who got swapped around the most in terms of CT side sets after JKS was added to the team. Now, I go back and forth on how important roles are, but there's definitely some credence to the fact that if you're very familiar with playing within a system at a certain spot, being moved to another can disrupt your gameplay. So I'm willing to bet that to some extent this did affect NAF, as you can see his numbers steadily go down once JKS was added, and maybe that compounded into some motivation issues. It's definitely true that towards the end, and especially as they exited the Austin Major, NAF was pretty upfront that he wasn't feeling good about his position in the team and that he wouldn't be surprised if he was taken off the roster. So his motivation is clearly not in the right place. I would hope that Flashy, the people at Team Liquid, sports psychologists, whatever it might be, sit him down and give him the confidence that he is an important aspect of this team. He is the anchor on the CT sides. He's very instrumental on the T side for creating space opposite from the main pack. What NAF does is enable Twist, NERDZ, and Ultimate to have their maximum amount of impact away from where he is. When NAF is at his best, he is one of the most consistent pieces to ever play Counter-Strike. Just steady, doesn't allow the moment to get to him, holds his nerve on stage. He is an utter rock, and that's why he's always been one of my favorite players. So I just want to see NAF not worry about the things on the outside, work alongside Shuhei to establish this new system, and bring that consistency back that Liquid desperately need. Because downstream of that, again, it opens up opportunities for Twist, NERDZ, and Ultimate to show off those flashy, explosive moments, those game-defining rounds that those three players can bring out. If NAF was more like his 2023 self, his 2024 self, then Ultimate dropping that 50 burger against Mouse would not have resulted in a loss. And in proof of that, NAF was very bad in that game up until it was getting close to overtime, where NAF actually pulled out some great B holds on the CT side, specifically on Mirage. He was bad throughout most of that game, but there were several rounds in that overtime where NAF looked like nasty NAF. If he can bring that level back, then Team Liquid actually get to be a pretty dangerous team. NERDZ and Twist don't need any comment on their impact. Ultimate is still a young opper, but as he gets more established in Tier 1, I'm starting to see more consistency out of him. So with Shuhei behind them, Flashy at the helm as the coach, Liquid can build into a pretty threatening side. Right now, a team like FaZe is going to take a step back. Na'Vi are an unknown. Aurora are still an older roster that made no moves. Mongols are going to take a step forward, but there's no reason that Liquid can't occupy that 6th, 7th slot in the top 10 and be one of those dark horse teams in the playoffs that can bump off a team like Mouse on any given day. But, and this will be the final note that we'll end on, this is the last chance for NAF, at least in this Liquid. Because of the VRS changes that came out towards the end of the Austin Major, Liquid are now considered a European team no matter how you slice it. They have to play in EU, they have to qualify to the next major through the EU VRS. So if we're 1 or 2 months into this season and NAF has not found a way to turn around his form, then Liquid have to consider other options. Their path to the majors just got more cutthroat, and they're not going to find a third NA player for any of their other pieces that'll be worth it. They won't find an NA Opera better than Ultimate, and they won't find an aggressive entry player better than Nerds. So Liquid have to be European. And if NAF can't hold up, there are better European anchors out there that they should be considering. I hope NAF can prove us wrong and bring it around, because when he plays to his best, he's one of the most entertaining Counter-Strike players of all time, in my opinion. And so I will be rooting for the return of Nasty NAF Fly and Liquid to prove the haters wrong. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Helps out immensely the YouTube algorithm. Help me get 10K subs by the end of the year. Thank you to SkinsMonkey for sponsoring this video. Check my link in the description down below. You get a trade on their website. You get up to $5 extra value on any trade up to $100 in value, as well as a 35% deposit bonus if you use my code. Thank you once again to SkinsMonkey. Thank you to my channel members, Justin, Jesse, Furley, Milan Berta, Bubblesj, Dr. Cocktor, Patatas Kaftesi, PTR, B1 Games, Cody Foxworthy, Justin Vander, Vegt, I'm Flashbank, Snowy White, Rowdy, Vergil'sPlasticChair, Snax Enjoyer, Crunchy Water, and zerotwocs. If you want to become a channel member, you can do so. Link description down below. For my get into the videos, just like the Discord. Make sure you follow my Twitch, see you guys in the video.